Good morning, boys and girls. Today is Monday, April 6th, and you have a little bit of a different writing assignment this week. So, Mrs. Swiss and I have been going pretty easy on you guys with writing, but this week you just need to submit one response, and everyone needs to be responsible for that, okay? So, you must do it. So, in Mrs. Swiss' assignment that you'll find on my slide deck, you'll notice that she posted some instructions, okay? The instructions say that this is due on Wednesday, so that's when you'll submit it. You're going to read this short passage, which is called Make a Bouncing Egg. And at the end, you're going to choose which type of response you want to write. So you get to choose if you want to write a narrative, opinion, or nonfiction. Okay? I'm going to read this passage aloud to you. So it says, make a bouncing egg. I'll show you like this. An egg is a very fragile object. If someone drops or even just bumps an uncooked egg, the egg's outer shell can break and its contents can spill out. Even after an egg has been cooked, it is still quite delicate and has a shell that can be easily cracked. However, there is a way to make an egg that can actually bounce. To create a bouncing egg, a few items are needed. Gather together these 3 items: a fresh raw egg, a bottle of white vinegar, and a clear glass jar. The best type of jar to use is a small jelly jar. Make sure the jar has a tight-fitting lid. Also, the egg will need to be boiled, so ask an adult to help with the first part of the experiment. With adults supervising the process, boil the egg on the stove in a pot of water. Sometimes people add salt to water when they boil eggs, but that is not necessary for this experiment. Allow the egg to boil for about 10 minutes. Once the egg has finished boiling, turn off the stove and allow the egg to cool off for a few minutes. Now take the cool boiled egg and place it inside the glass jar with care. Try not to drop the egg, as that will cause the shell to crack. One way to get the egg in the jar is to put it on a spoon and carefully slide the spoon down inside the glass. Once the egg is resting safely on the bottom of the jar, pour the white vinegar into the jar until the egg is entirely covered in vinegar. After 1 week has passed, open the lid and drain the vinegar from the jar. Take the egg out of the jar and rinse it off with cool tap water. Pat it dry carefully. The egg should feel rubbery, just like a ball. Try dropping it on the flat surface and watch it bounce. So, you're going to put your response right below here, okay? Right where she said, put your response here. So you would start typing at this point, okay? Now, for your response, you get to pick if you want to do a narrative. So that's like telling a story. That's fiction, okay? You could make up any story. You could do an opinion piece. So you could say how you feel about this. What is your opinion about the bouncing egg, okay? Or you could do a nonfiction piece. So that is telling about the facts of something like this, okay? So today I did an example for you of a narrative piece, okay? I want to show you an example so that you'll be able to figure out your response a little bit more easily, okay? Please be mindful not to copy my example, okay? You're just going to come up with your own ideas based off kind of what I show you. So since I chose to do a narrative, I am of course going to look at Mrs. Swiss' rubric and see what she wants me to have in my narrative. Okay, on this rubric, it tells me what she is going to grade me on. So if I want to get a good grade, I need to look at this. It says that for the narrative section, that I need to establish a context and introduce a narrator or characters and organized sequence that unfolds naturally. Okay, so that means I need characters and I need a storyline. The writer uses narrative techniques such as dialogue, pacing, and description to show experiences and events. Okay, so I'm going to try and use dialogue. I'm going to use description. The writer uses a variety of transition words, phrases, and clauses to manage the sequence. Transition words, I need those. The writer uses concrete words and phrases and details to convey experiences. Okay, so I need details. I need good word choice. I provide a conclusion that follows the experiences or events. Of course, we need a conclusion. And then I need conventions. So that's like capitalization, punctuation, I'm indenting at paragraphs, okay? So I'm going to take a few minutes and review this example that I did, okay? So I wrote my name at the top and the date, and Mrs. Swiss would like you to put what type of response you're doing. So I wrote make a bouncing egg, narrative. That's the one I chose to do, okay? I wrote, some might say Jenny had the funniest mom ever. Notice how I have a hook? That's the beginning of my introduction. I'm trying to hook in the readers. She loved to play silly tricks on her daughter, especially for April Fool's Day. This year, Jenny's mom, Mrs. Smith, planned to do the bouncing egg trick. Okay, that's my introduction. It's 3 simple sentences that are going to tell me kind of what's probably going to happen in this story. So from that introduction, I can determine that this story is probably going to be about Jenny's mom playing a trick on her with a bouncing egg. Here's my first body paragraph. The week before April Fool's Day, Mrs. Smith was soaking a half-dozen hard-boiled eggs in a jar of vinegar. She hid them in the garage so Jenny wouldn't see them. The night before the big day, Mrs. Smith pulled the eggs out of the jar and patted them dry with a cloth. She tested one. Boing, boing. It bounced perfectly on the counter. Mrs. Smith could not wait to fool Jenny. So notice how I'm using information and details from the text in my response, okay? Even though this is a narrative and it's a fictional story, I'm still telling a little bit about how do you make this bouncing egg, right? So that's why I say that she was soaking them in jars of vinegar and she pulled the eggs out and patted them dry, okay? So those are some details from the text. Now I'm including some dialogue here, okay? Finally, it was the morning of April 1st. Mrs. Smith was in the kitchen sipping her coffee. Jenny, Mrs. Smith called, it's time for breakfast. Notice how I'm punctuating this dialogue, boys and girls? Okay, I'm putting my quotation marks on the outside of my punctuation, and I have my little dialogue tag, which is like Mrs. Smith called. Coming, Mom, Jenny replied. She came downstairs and slumped in a seat at the table. Morning, honey, Mrs. Smith said with a smile. How about some eggs for breakfast? Notice how every time I'm switching someone talking, I have a new paragraph, okay? So this is the mom talking. Now Jenny's going to talk, so I'm starting a new paragraph. Sure, Jenny said sleepily. Mrs. Smith took the egg carton out of the fridge and pretended to slip on the floor. The carton flew in the air. Mom, watch out, cried Jenny, thinking the eggs would break all over the place. Instead, eggs started bouncing all over the kitchen. Jenny looked shocked. What's going on? Jenny yelled. April Fools, Mrs. Smith cried. Jenny and her mom laughed the rest of the morning. Oh, Mom, you always know the best jokes, Jenny smiled. Okay, and then I include a little conclusion there at the end. It tells me what happened after the whole story and what the characters are doing, how they're feeling. And then my last line is just kind of a little playful, oh, Mom, you always know the best jokes. Okay? So before I submit this, which is due on Wednesday, I would go in and check and just double check that I have everything that's on the rubric, okay? Since you guys are told exactly what you're graded on, nothing should be a surprise. So make sure you're referencing the rubric for whichever section you choose, okay? Whichever type of response, narrative, opinion, or nonfiction. Okay, boys and girls, make sure you're working on this throughout the week. Maybe you're going to start it today and keep working on it on the next few days, okay? So that you're not doing it all in one day. Thanks for watching.